How's it going, everybody? Ryan here with Off the Record Fantasy Football, the fantasy football podcast to help you dominate your league. And today we are talking NFC East football. We are going to preview this division. It's one with a lot of intrigue and a lot of players that I think can help you win your league. So this division is definitely going to be one to target with some guys that I think are being slept on. So grab your paper, grab your pen, and let's go ahead and talk off the record. For starter, guys, the Deshaun Watson trial suspension announcement just came out. And I got to say, for starters, I am incredibly disappointed. It's only 6 games. I can't believe that Deshaun. I mean, I can believe it. Let's be honest. We can all believe that this is the outcome. I just don't think it's a very just outcome. I mean, there were actual people, women impacted by this, and hopefully there becomes a resolution that at least does more justice. I'm not going to dive into the whole thing right now. We'll talk about how it's going to impact your drafts and the draft stock of other Browns players. But I just want everybody to remember there's a human element to all of this stuff. And I know we talk about football and, all the excitement on ESPN and whatnot, but there is a human element. And I want everybody to remember that there was a lot of people affected by this, a lot. So let's go ahead and dive into the NFC East, and let's start again with the quarterbacks. I really like this style, doing this with the NFC South, and I think the NFC East is another division that provides quite a bit of intrigue. And like I said, some players that I think are being underrated right now and maybe slept on because of previous biases, or maybe you got burned in the past. So let's start with those quarterbacks. And the first quarterback I want to touch on is Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles is an absolute league winner. I'm going to say it. I'm going to start my preview with the fact that he's a league winner. I love Jalen Hurts. I love where you're getting him. You're getting him at pick 65. That's middle of the 5th round, early 5th round for those of you in 12-team leagues. In 10-team leagues, you're looking at the middle of the 6th, 7th round, maybe. I think it is the middle of the 7th. Either way, I think he's an absolute stud. He was QB9 last season, but he did end up missing 2 games. If you take account those 2 missed games, he was QB6 in fantasy points per game. And I really think QB6 in fantasy points per game, that's his floor. I have to say that this season, I think QB6 is his floor. Right now, he's being drafted as QB7 overall. So I think, again, being drafted at his floor. I mentioned this in the last one, guys, with Tom Brady. I like players that are getting drafted at their floor. Take the guys that, if you take them where they're being taken right now, take the guys that, okay, cool. If he provides that value, I'm happy with it because I think that value is going to be worth it for my team. But if he outperforms his floor, you got an absolute steal. And I think that's what Jalen Hurts is. I expect a reasonable increase in passing production for him. I think he's going to have more attempts this year. I think he's a better quarterback than people give him credit for. I really think Jalen Hurts puts in the work and is improved every time he steps on the football field. Now, I know they were incredibly disappointing in the playoffs against the Buccaneers, but they were just outmatched, outclassed. This year, I think he's coming in. He's got AJ Brown. That is huge. That is a number one bona fide proven alpha dog. Like, that dude is a dog, right? And we've seen him perform with a quarterback like Tannehill, so why can he not perform with a quarterback like Jalen Hurts? Oh, and by the way, Devontae Smith is still there. If we see Jalen Hurts take his points per game from last season and expand it out to a full 17-game slate, and account for a 10% increase in passing production. Not even rushing. I'm not even increasing his rushing, right? He rushed for 784 yards last season and 10 touchdowns. It's pretty tough for me to say that he's going to do much better than about 750 and 10 again. But I think we could reasonably see him throw the ball 100 more times than he did last season. I could see him throwing 539 times this season. Now, that may sound crazy, but he threw 532 times in just 15 games last season. 2 more games, 10% more, which is about 2 more throws per game. Really? Like, I don't think that's that outrageous to say. Maybe more efficient rushing. And all of a sudden, you got a guy who threw for 3,100 yards last year, who's throwing for 3,900 this year, threw for 16 touchdowns last year, 20 this year, threw for 9 interceptions and 11 interceptions this coming season is what I think he could reasonably do. You factor in the 784 yards again on the ground with 10 rushing touchdowns. You have a 352 fantasy point quarterback. That is QB5 being drafted at QB7. And I don't think that's an outlandish projection. And I think he could even exceed that projection. I think he could do even better than a 10% increase. I mean, it's tough to expect 20% increases, right? But we could maybe see more efficient rushing or just more volume passing or more efficient passing. If he's going to have 540 attempts, he might crack that 4,000 yard mark. He might get to 4,200 yards. I mean, I know that's 1,000 more yards than last season, but I think he can make the jump here in, I believe it's year number 3 for him. I mean, I love Jalen Hurts. And guys, one of the things that you always got to remember is if I love a dude, it's probably because I love him at his ADP. Now, running back 1, yeah, maybe I love him, but I'm not going to be as ecstatic about him as I am as Jalen Hurts at QB7, who I think has got QB5 as his probably most likely outcome and could even surpass that into the top 3 quarterbacks. I think he could finish above guys that being drafted above him. Kyler Murray, I could totally see him finishing above him for fantasy purposes. Same thing with Joe Burrow, who's above him. Lamar, now that's a tough one. That's one that I think could be tricky, especially with how much more Lamar rushes. And Lamar is looking good in this so far in training camp. Justin Herbert, I think, is penciled in above Hurts no matter what. He could outperform Patrick Mahomes. He straight up could outperform Patrick Mahomes. We'll see how Mahomes does without Tyreek Hill. I still think he's going to be a great quarterback, but Jalen Hurts could be a better fantasy quarterback. And then Josh Allen. Josh Allen is the dude, right? He's QB1. He's the guy in fantasy, right? So I'm not going to obviously move him out of that spot whatsoever. But I think Jalen Hurts is an absolute steal for where he's going right now. I think we saw last season is the worst case scenario, right? You're taking him at QB7. If he puts up another similar season to last year, totally fine, right? QB9. Okay, you overdrafted him by 2 quarterback spots. That's really not that big of a deal. But the upside is tremendous with a guy like Jalen Hurts. You're getting him in the 6th, 7th round, somewhere in there, 5th, 6th, 7th round. You're looking pretty good to get a top 5 potential, top 3 potential quarterback in those rounds. Like I said, with Tom Brady, you've already got a full starting roster in a standard roster league, right? 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a tight end, a flex. And then you take Jalen Hurts. Are you kidding me? That team would be loaded as long as you take the right guys. But that team would be loaded. I understand the Jalen Hurts. I don't want him as my quarterback. I'm on my regular team. I don't want NFL. If we're starting a franchise, Jalen Hurts is not my guy. I get that. But we're talking fantasy here, guys. And I think Jalen Hurts is just an absolute stud. Take whatever prejudice or biases you have against, he only threw 3,100 yards and he only barely he didn't even have a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, right? He didn't even have that. But he had 784 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. I think he can do that again. Maybe a little bit of a decrease in the rushing touchdowns, but a significant increase in passing yards now that they gave him weapons outside of Devontae Smith. He's no longer throwing to converted cornerbacks, etc. But I think A.J. Brown makes a huge difference. I think it opens up so much more. And I think they're going to be ready to throw the ball. He's going to be ready to take the step, guys. And he's a guy you want. And speaking of throwing the ball a ton, the next guy in this division that I want to talk about is quarterback Dak Prescott. He's currently going as QB8, and that's exactly where he finished last season. You could arguably say he's got more volume and enough elite offensive talent around him to say that he could finish above a guy like Murray and maybe Joe Burrow, right? Who are both guys going ahead of him. I don't see him going ahead of Hurts, right? So I could see Dak Prescott jumping into QB5 territory. He's only done that once in his career. I think Dak Prescott is being drafted exactly where he's going to finish. It's not being drafted at his ceiling, which I think is definitely an avoid if you're drafting a guy at his ceiling. But I think you're drafting Dak Prescott at the most likely spot. You could wait probably and take a guy like Wilson, Brady, Stafford, and save your pick. He's going at pick 75 right now on Sleeper, so that's about the 6th round ish, 6, 7, right? I would wait probably and not take a guy like Dak Prescott. If there is a run on quarterbacks and you're like, I really don't like Wilson, somebody reached on Brady, I just don't see a world where you're going to have to take a guy like Dak Prescott. I think his 600 attempts last season, 596, 4,449, that's 4,500 yards, 37 touchdowns, 10 picks. He doesn't really run that much anymore after the ankle injury. And now with the offense they're running in Dallas with Kellen Moore, I don't think you're going to see as much of that rushing upside, but it's like half of what he used to do in the first 4 seasons. In his first 4 seasons, he's rushed for 282, 357, 305, 277, rushing for 6,663, right, in touchdowns. Last year, he only rushed 48 times, which is about where he normally rushes, but he significantly dropped off in yards per carry by about a yard per carry from his career average. I'd say a yard and a half. But he only had 1 rushing touchdown. So you can probably look for that to bump up, right? Only 1 rushing touchdown. He's gone 666, 331 in rushing touchdowns. Might be able to see him get 2 more rushing touchdowns. That gets him a little bit more in terms of fantasy points. Last year, he finished with 320. That would get him around 332, 335. We'll just say that, right? That's not too crazy. 335 bumps him up to 1 point behind Aaron Rodgers, right? We're looking at what Dak Prescott is. We know what he is. We know what he's going to do. We know how it's going to go, right? We know Dak Prescott is going to be about a low-end QB1, mid to low-end QB1, depending on your league size. Dak Prescott's a great quarterback. He's not going to be anything flashy. He's going to be solid. He did lose Amari Cooper, which is going to hurt his value, but I think he's going to be really solid. He was cold towards down the stretch there, but at the beginning of the season, he was great. We'll see how he goes without Amari Cooper. I don't think that's going to make too much of an impact on Dak himself, but I just think that Dak Prescott, a guy you're drafting with the expectation you're not going to get a top 5 quarterback. If everything goes right, or the guys ahead of him do a little bit worse, you might be looking at that. But as all things considered, I don't foresee him. I wouldn't project him to be up anything more than QB5, and that's a ceiling, right? And you're drafting my QB8, QB7, QB8. Yeah, you're looking pretty safe in that area. So I'd say those are the 2 guys to look at, Hurts and Prescott. Prescott's the safer of the 2. You want something not flashy. You need a quarterback. Most of the good ones are gone. Take Dak. You won't be upset with it. You're not losing your league because you took Dak Prescott. I love Hurts. I think he's got top 3 upside. I think QB5 is totally within the range of outcomes, and you're getting him at QB7. I think he can outperform that draft spot. And I know that's not saying much, right? I'm saying Dak could be QB5 if everything goes right, and I'm saying Hurts could go QB3 if everything goes right. That difference is bigger than you guys might think. It's pretty significant. We're looking at 2 to 4 fantasy points per game, and that makes and breaks it at the end of the season, guys. I mean, Allen, Herbert, Brady all finished above 385 last season. QB4 was 375, right? So you're looking at a 10-point drop off there, and then a 30-point drop off to QB5, right? So those top guys are top dogs. So the other quarterbacks in this division are not top dogs. Daniel Jones, Carson Wentz. I don't want to even hear the Daniel Jones could be Josh Allen argument. No, just stop. He's shown nothing in his career to be like Josh Allen. He's probably a fine quarterback. Is he going to end up becoming a quarterback that's arguably the best in the league, right? It's a debate, right? You can have it. You're not going to be looked at as crazy. An undisputed top 4 quarterback. No, Daniel Jones does not have that in his range of outcomes. I think he can still be serviceable. I still think he can be good. 2 quarterback leagues or super flex leagues. Yes, Daniel Jones might have a role because Brian Dable is going to maybe scheme up some easy throws and whatnot. And then Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is not bad. He's fine, right? He's not going to do anything stupendous that gets you off your feet. Maybe he'll do some baffling things, but for the most part, he's kind of just developed into a serviceable quarterback, finishing QB 14 last year, 3,500 yards, 27 touchdowns, 7 picks. Pretty solid. That was his best year in Philly, essentially, as well. Same kind of stat line, 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, 7 picks. He only finishes QB 12 that year as well. I'm not looking at Carson Wentz as anything more than a high-end QB2. Daniel Jones has shown he can be a low-end QB2. So neither of these guys are guys you want to start on a weekly basis. They may provide some matchup value. I wouldn't bet on it. It's just going to be too hard to predict when those matchups come that they're going to do well in. So Hurts, love him. Absolutely snatch him up in that 6-7 round, even maybe late 5th, 5-6 turn. Go for it 100%. I love Jalen Hurts. He's going to be an absolute phenom in fantasy. Dak Prescott, very safe, very solid. You're not swinging for the fences, but you're just getting a reliable guy if you're starting to get worried about what quarterbacks are left. And then Daniel Jones and Carson Wentz. I wouldn't really think about it unless you're in a multi-quarterback league. Next up are the running backs, and I think there are quite a few running backs to talk about here. It's just such an interesting division when it comes to running backs, and it's such an interesting division when it comes to these offensive skilled positions. So like I said, you may not love the talent in the division. Like I said with the NFC South, right? There's only one team in the NFC South that you really think is going to make the playoffs at all or make some noise. Same thing with this division here. You've got maybe 2 playoff teams in this division, maybe. It'll be interesting to see how that wild card shakes out. It'll be an interesting division, but not one that you're like, oh my God, it's loaded. But it's loaded at this running back position. So let's talk about it. We've got guys like Saquon Barkley of the Giants, Ezekiel Elliott of the Cowboys, Antonio Gibson of the Commanders. Got to get used to saying that one. Miles Sanders of the Eagles. Then you got guys, backups. Tony Pollard for Dallas. J.D. McKissick for Washington. You got Brian Robinson, Kenneth Gainwell, guys like that. Interesting guys. Are you going to want to roster them? Maybe not. So let's go ahead and start at the guys you do want to roster. And let's start with Saquon Barkley. I think Saquon Barkley has RB1 upside, guys. I really, really do. I think the increase in talent for Saquon Barkley is just it's so there, right? Like the Saquon Barkley fear is because he came back and didn't look great after an ACL tear. And then he had a high ankle sprain after a couple games. And when he played with a decent quarterback, I'm going to say Daniel Jones is a decent quarterback. He's at least better than Mike Glennon or Jake Fromm. He started to show some signs of the old Saquon as we got into the end of the season. And now with new head coach Brian Daboll, former Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, coming in there, I think we could seriously see a bounce back to not necessarily running back one Saquon Barkley in his rookie season, but I think we could definitely see a guy that's going to get you 200 fantasy points. Finishes maybe a top 10 running back if everything goes well. Definitely a high-end RB2 without a doubt. He's going at the end of the second round, mid to late second right now, pick 20. I think he's a guy that, if you took a wide receiver in the first round, Saquon Barkley can easily return RB1 value for you. He finished last season with 3.6 yards per carry, but the Giants did improve their offensive line. They took Evan Neal, I believe it is, out of Alabama with the 7th overall pick, which I think was a great pick. The fact that he went to 7. And Pro Football Focus actually says they improved their offensive line quite a bit, quite significantly. It was a significant jump as far as how they're just on paper. They've improved without any games played. I understand, but they were woeful last season. If Brian Daboll can scheme up some quick things, some interesting looks, some complex eye candy for the defense to decipher, well, Saquon's gone, right? If you can't figure that out in a split second, you can't figure out if Kadarius Toney coming across is getting the ball or not. Saquon's gone, right? He just needs a little bit of daylight. And Devin Singletary was a top 10 running back in all seasons with Brian Daboll in breakaway runs, where we've seen Saquon do his big damage, right? You get those days where Saquon Barkley's putting up 27 points. Yeah, he's breaking a big one to the house. If he can do that 8 times like Devin Singletary did last season, you're going to have a really, really good RB2 if you're taking him in the second round and you took a running back. Or he could be your RB1. He's going to be a low-end RB1, but I don't think that's crazy to think that Saquon Barkley can come back from this high ankle sprain, which is now way in the past, right? High ankle sprain, it's healed. It takes, about a month or 2 to fully heal. You're good to go. He's got an off season of training in. Plus, he's another season removed from the ACL tear. I love Saquon Barkley. I finally feel like last year you were taking him at running pick 6 overall, right? That might have been a little bit too rich for a question mark. You're taking him at pick 20 this year. That's not, if you're swinging for the fence, you want to win your league, take a guy like Saquon Barkley in the second round. You're looking at a guy that gets you RB1 upside, a top 10 running back in the second round. Pair him with, I don't know, maybe you happen to have the 3rd overall pick and took Austin Eckler, and all of a sudden your running backs are Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, both guys that can finish in the top 10. You got two top 10 running. Like, come on. So as you guys can tell, I'm all aboard the Saquon Barkley train. I love him. I think he's going to have a great bounce back year. I think the new head coach, the new play calling, the new scheme improved offensive line and more serviceable quarterback play throughout the season. I think that'll be a recipe for success for Saquon. Next, we have Ezekiel Elliott. We'll just talk about this Dallas backfield, Zeke and Pollard. And I know everybody is hating on Zeke, but I don't think you have to anymore. He's over the PCL tear, which he even said himself definitely limited his explosiveness. Now, obviously, he's no doctor, but he knows what he's feeling in his body, and he's going at pick 29 now. Again, he's not a top 5. Last season, these two guys burned a lot of players because they took him, 5th and 6th overall. And at least Zeke returned good value for the first month and a half before that PCL tear, right? He was good. He got a ton of volume. And now if he's healthy and he's still got quite a few touches left on him, right? He's only 27, guys. He finished as running back 7. He's never had a season worse than running back 13. And he's gotten over 200 fantasy points in 4 of his 6 seasons. I mean, he was 3 points away in 2020 after missing 2 games there as well. Or 1 game there. This is a guy that's going to get you 4.2 to 4.5 yards per carry. He's going to get 240 carries. He's going to be the goal line back in a high-powered offense. He may cede some of those targets, right? He had 65 last season, fewer than he's ever had. He may drop a little bit there. But again, you're not drafting him as an RB1. You're drafting him as an RB2. And to say that he's not worth the pick at 29, yes, it's not flashy. But he has a ton of volume, and he's still Zeke. He's still got that explosiveness left in him if that PCL is fully healthy. He's a guy that I think falls into that same bucket as James Conner, Leonard Fournette, guys that, everyone's like, wow, they've been injured in the past. And listen, running backs are the most injured position in the NFL. If I know a guy has got clear path to goal line touches and a lot of volume, I want him. And that guy is Ezekiel Elliott, right? He's going to be your RB2. You could even get him in the 3rd round, potentially, if you're drafting at the turn, early 3rd, mid 3rd. If you're in a 10-team league, you got a wide receiver 1, a running back 1, and then you take Zeke. Like, again, you got to think about the roster construction. Don't go into the draft with, I just hate Zeke in all scenarios. I think Zeke as your 3rd pick is a great pick. You have 2 A1 starters to fall back on, and Zeke has the potential to, again, finish as a very high-end RB2 and even could sneak into that low RB1 territory in 12-team leagues. And then Tony Pollard here, I think the fantasy community has been clamoring for more Tony Pollard, but clearly the Cowboys aren't going to give us more Tony Pollard, even with an Ezekiel Elliott injury. Zeke hurt his back. Zeke hurt his knee. Zeke was still out there getting 18 touches a game, right? Tony Pollard is explosive. Tony Pollard is great. And I think in best ball as well as regular fantasy leagues, I think he's got value, right? He finished as RB 28 last season. We could see something similar, an RB3 season, low end RB2. I think that's what we're looking at for Tony Pollard. He's going at pick 87 right now, which might seem a little high. The 9th round might be a bit early. It's really, when you're getting into the 9th round, taking a running back who's got flex upside, and then if the starter goes down, he's literally got RB1 upside from whenever the Zeke would go down, right? He's got high-end RB2 upside without a starter there. Flex player you can play pretty much every week and feel solid about. I think the 9th round, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that range, I think that's fine to take a guy like Tony Pollard. I wouldn't stack him with Zeke. I wouldn't take both. Don't handcuff yourself like that, but he's definitely somebody that if you've got 3 running backs already, if you're taking him as your RB4, feel really good about it. You've got a guy that is got tremendous upside, right? I always like to say, take the upside in those middle rounds because you already got a starter. You already have starters that you trust, right? Take the guys that could supplant those starters, or maybe guys that make your starters expendable. Trade somebody if you have a weak position, or trade this guy, right? Tony Pollard's one of those guys. Definitely like Tony Pollard at his spot. Zeke, though, I think the hate is too much on Zeke. We'll move over to Washington next. The next highest running back on the board is Antonio Gibson. His sleeper ADP is pick 41. That's about the 5th round. If we're talking 10-team leagues, 4th round and 12-team leagues. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't like him at all this year. I'm fine with where he's going, but I just don't want him. I don't want a running back who's got fumble problems. And okay, he might be cleaning those up, but he's fumbled 6 times last year, and we know Ron Rivera doesn't like to keep guys on the field who fumble. He's losing potential passing game work to J.D. McKissic because J.D. McKissic is a great pass catching back in the NFL, and they brought him back and, snaked Buffalo out of him. So he's clearly going to have a role. And then he's going to have Brian Robinson out of Alabama, the rookie, potentially taking goal line touches away. A big bruising back, and he's been running with the first team. Now, we'll see if that's just because of the injuries with Gibson and whatnot, but he could be a very, very interesting pick, Brian Robinson. If you're in a really deep league or you're at the end of your draft and you want to take an upside swing, Brian Robinson is 100% the guy you want to take the upside swing on. J.D. McKissic, he's fine. I don't like him even as a flex play. You're looking at a really, really thin roster. If he's your flex, you may have to. You may like him. You may have done good things for you in the past, but really, you never know when this guy is going to be good, right? Looking at it, like let's look at his first month last season. 0.8, 17.8, 4.8, 14.4, keep going, 1.2, 15, 7.6, 13, right? And then the bye week. You never know when a guy like J.D. McKissic is going to get his touches, even when Antonio Gibson may go in and out, right? You don't know when J.D. McKissic is going to get his touches, and that's not, I don't want a guy like that, right? At the end of the season, he may look good. He may have averaged such and such and such. But if he's going to average 9 points, I want to make sure I'm getting at least 9 points pretty much every week. He's not doing that. He's getting you 15 and then 1. I don't want that guy. The guy out of this backfield that I feel like has the most interesting appeal is Brian Robinson. I don't like Antonio Gibson. Let me correct that statement. I love Antonio Gibson. I don't love how the Commanders are going to use him this season. I don't want a running back who's not going to get third down pass catching work and only going to get carries between the 20s. His talent is there. Unquestionably, his talent is there. And if he seizes control of this backfield and removes all doubts, he's been an RB 13 and RB 12 in back-to-back seasons. Like, he is so talented. But if we continue to get frustrated by not getting the usage that we want to see out of him, getting, less than 50% of the snaps, now with Brian Robinson there, I don't know if Ron Rivera is not just going to turn to the fresh rookie, the bruising back, and he's going to look at Gibson and Robinson as interchangeable and then McKissic as the third down guy, right? I just don't like the potential that I'm going to take a 4th round pick, my RB2, and all of a sudden he's going to get yanked off the field on all the important snaps. He's still going to get his touches, right? He's going to get 70 yards a game and maybe 5 catches. But that's not 5 catches. Good Lord. The guy gets 2 catches, 3 catches a game. Now, towards the end of the season, he started to get used in the pass catching game more. And that's when we saw more of his value return. But a guy that's getting 14 to 20 carries for 60 yards and banking on a touchdown, no thank you. Not my RB2. I love swinging on the upside. It's there. We need more clarity that he's the guy. And as every day passes and Ron Rivera is still the head coach, Antonio Gibson feels less and less like the guy. I really want to see Gibson take over this backfield. I just don't think it's going to happen this season. It has. Let's be honest. I can't say he's just a breakout stud, right? He's been an RB1 basically back-to-back seasons. But the situation just scares me with Robinson and McKissic. I don't trust him. He's a guy that I want to fade this year. I don't want a lot of shares of unless, we get clarification that, hey, he is the lead back. The other guys are compliments. And if that's the case, maybe you can trust him more. I still don't. I know Ron Rivera's got Robinson in his back pocket and is going to be willing to stick him out there. Robinson was a great running back in college. Don't be surprised if his style and his just work ethic and the big bruising style, and he's not going to fumble. If that all of a sudden Ron Rivera's like, okay, maybe you guys split the carries and Gibson and McKissic split the catches. That's a death sentence. That is a pure running back by committee and a death sentence. Finally, we have Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles, last team to talk about as far as running backs. Kenneth Gainwell is still here and a guy that maybe provides some upside, Kenneth Gainwell, but I love Miles Sanders this year, guys. His efficiency is increasing and he's in line for a lot more touches, more so what we saw out of him in his rookie season. And I think with a more high-powered offense here in Philadelphia, now with A.J. Brown, who we will touch on in a second, I think Miles Sanders is finally going to provide value where he's being drafted. He's getting drafted at pick 68. You don't have many lead backs left at pick 68. You're talking 5th round, 6th round. 7th round, if people are passing it, right? If I can get a number 1 running back whose competition is Kenneth Gainwell, whose competition is Boston Scott, are you kidding me? Like, come on. I want Miles Sanders this year as my RB3. If you're getting me Miles Sanders as an RB3 this year, guys, last year, RB2 burned a lot of people. Really didn't do much any week. He didn't see much explosion. He was still averaging 5.5 yards per carries, though. He was still an elite, efficient running back. 137 attempts, but 5.5 yards per carry. And yes, I know Jalen Hurts is going to take some of those carries. And yes, it's going to take some of the... He finished with no touchdowns. Miles Sanders scored absolutely no touchdowns last year on 137 carries. That is not going to happen again. If he can get closer to what he did in 2020, where he was RB24 in PPR, by the way, that is a low-end RB2 who you could be playing in your flex every week. Yeah, sign me up at pick 68. I understand Miles Sanders has been disappointing. He had that great rookie season, and then he's just gotten less and less every week or every year. But I think this is a guy that's going to post over 900 yards. He's going to have over 250 receiving yards. I think it's a guy that is going to be in a good offense, and I want the lead running back on a good offense at pick 68. Come on, like that just feels like that feels too easy. Something's got to give. I understand that maybe I'm going against the entire fantasy community here, but Miles Sanders, to me, slated for a bigger role. Looking at monster potential stat lines, he only played 12 games last, right? Like, all of this starts to feel like last season was the lowest he'll ever be. He's going to bounce back to an RB2, and you're taking him at pick 68. Guys, remember that, pick 68. The upside is there. The reason I'm so in love with Miles Sanders and so down on Gibson is they may finish back-to-back and how many points they get you this season, but you're getting 2 full rounds later than the other, and I'm fine with that value. Give me the value. I want that value for Miles Sanders. Next, we have wide receivers. We're going to end with the pass catchers here. Yes, tight ends, they're coming. I know they're also pass catchers. There's really 2 guys in this division, more than the last division. But here we go. Wide receivers that we want to think about. CD Lamb. Dallas. The alpha dog in Dallas. This dude has all the talent in the world. He's going to get 140 targets with Amari Cooper gone. James Washington went down in practice. We'll see if Michael Gallup is healthy and back. He's on the PUP list, Michael Gallup is, after having ACL surgery. Jalen Tolbert is a 3rd-round rookie. I'm not afraid of that. CeeDee Lamb is the dude, 23 years old, going into year 3. I want year 3 wide receivers. I want CeeDee Lamb. I think he's got tremendous value. Going at pick 15, you're taking him at the end of the 2nd round, middle of the second, more so middle of the 2nd round. So you can pair him with one of those late running backs, Joe Mixon, CeeDee Lamb. Oh my goodness, would that be one heck of a start to a draft? And we'll see how things go with your draft. But oh my goodness, I love me some CeeDee Lamb this year, guys. I really think he's going to be tremendous value for you. I don't see how he doesn't fly up boards. Now, yes, he's going as wide receiver 6, I think this is. Yeah, this is wide receiver 6 on Sleeper. That's pretty high. He's moved above Tyreek Hill. The hype is real for CeeDee Lamb, and I think it's only going to get higher. So if you can get your hands on CeeDee Lamb, I love it. I think he's the unquestioned number 1 in a high-powered passing offense with a good quarterback, a great offensive coordinator, and he's going to get targets. 20, 30 more targets than last year, leading to 15, 20 more catches. We're looking at close to 90 to 100 catches this season. Sign me up for that. He is rising, right? His price is rising, but I'm still buying. At wide receiver 6. I think that is his floor. I think wide receiver 6 is his floor, guys. I think we may see an emergence from CeeDee Lamb that we weren't. Many people might have expected it when he was a rookie, but we haven't seen it yet, right? Wide receiver 22, wide receiver 19. He's gonna have a monster season. I love CeeDee Lamb. Give me all the CeeDee Lamb. The next couple guys are on the same team. I'm just going based off of ADP. AJ Brown is next, and he's going at pick 27, 28. I think he's going to have a great season. He's no longer on a run-happy offense. I like Jalen Hurts, right? I don't think he's going to explode like perhaps some might think, right? Wide receivers changing teams rarely explode. I know Stephon Diggs just did it for the Bills, and that's the quickest one I can pull to the top of my head. But they don't always return immediate value. So I think 28, it's a great spot for A.J. Brown. I'd be very happy with him there at the early, mid-third round in 12 teams. I think you're looking at a great value. I think you're looking at a guy who's got wide receiver 1 potential. I think we might be looking at high-end wide receiver 2 as more likely what he can end up doing. We're going to see probably numbers closer to 2020 when he had 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns, right? Last season, he was pretty injured. He's been kind of banged up here and there. But I just think he's going to have a great season again. We're going to go back to 1,000 yards for him. We're going to see closer around 10 touchdowns. We're looking somewhere between wide receiver, 16, wide receiver 10, that range. I think that's a really solid range for A.J. Brown. And I think you're going to be happy if you get A.J. Brown as your wide receiver 2 or as your wide receiver 1 with 2 great running backs. Yeah, sign me up for that. That is a great slam dunk pick. A.J. Brown, I love the upside. I love the connection with Jalen Hurts. We'll see if it's there, but I think it's going to be. I think A.J. Brown is a guy you want to get there in the 3rd round. Next up, we have Terry McLaurin from the Washington Commanders going at pick 43. And let's be honest, people are down on Terry, right? He's been wide receiver 2, a very, very solid wide receiver 2 his entire career. Wide receivers 29, 20, and 25 in 3 straight seasons. Oh yeah, he just got a massive extension. He's a great locker room guy. And he's playing with the best quarterback of his career. I know it's Carson Wentz, but it is the best quarterback that has ever thrown him the ball. And it's not like Carson Wentz can't support a top receiver. Hello, Michael Pittman last season broke out. And I think Terry McLaurin could do the same thing, especially with Jahan Dotson now also taking pressure off him, right? With Curtis Samuel's injury last year, it was all on Terry McLaurin. It was all on his shoulders, right? Everybody knew where the ball was going. And I guess it could have been disappointing for some, but 130 targets, close to 80 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. Yeah, sign me up for that again. I think he can do even better than that. More so back to what he did in 2020, if not maybe more yards. I like Terry McLaurin as a really high-end, solid wide receiver too. I'm not afraid of Carson Wentz. I'm not afraid of the Washington Commanders offense, even though I'm not wanting a ton of shares of it. Give me a guy like Terry McLaurin for sure. And there's really not much more to say than really good wide receiver 2. Pick 43. You're talking 4th round. Yeah, I'll take it. 4th round. Sign me up. My wide receiver 2 after I've already got 2 running backs, 2 receivers, or maybe he's my 3rd receiver and I have 1 elite running back, right? Like the fact that he's the 4th player you're taking on your team feels so good about that because he's just that ridiculously solid wide receiver 2. Next up, we got Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown's running mate. And while some people may think that is a bad sign for him, let's not forget that he had 104 targets, 60 catches, 916 yards, and 5 touchdowns. What's to say he can't do that? And maybe a bit better in the reception department, right? Maybe catching more than 60%, up to 65% on a similar target share, right? You're looking at closer to 70 receptions there for over 1,000 yards, another 5 touchdowns, right? You're looking at another wide receiver 2 that is ridiculously solid. Now, he got hyped to oblivion last year, and some people might have said he's my wide receiver 1. Don't want to do that, but you want him as your wide receiver 2. And I think A.J. Brown, high-end wide receiver 2. Devontae Smith, mid-end wide receiver 2. Devontae Smith, ceiling, high-end wide receiver 2. A.J. Brown, ceiling, mid wide receiver 1, right? So these 2 guys are going to kind of work in tandem, and it's not going to take away from Devontae Smith because A.J. Brown is there. The targets are going to be there in Philadelphia. It's just going to happen, right? I mean, I'm not at all afraid of, oh no, is he going to get his targets stolen by AJ? No, the targets are going to be there, right? If we think that Jalen Hurts could throw for over 500 passes, 2 players on this team are going to be able to sustain over 100 targets. I think it's going to happen. I mean, last season, Quez Watkins, Jalen Reagor combining for 119 targets. Devontae Smith with 104. Yeah, Just give those 119 targets to A.J. Brown and keep Devontae Smith at 104. Slight improvement in receptions, slight improvement in yards, similar touchdowns, and bam, you got yourself a wide receiver 2 that you're feeling really good about taking at pick 85. Pick 85. We're talking 9th round here. Like, I just don't see how a guy that can be so clearly a wide receiver 2 this season. Like, I like to envision paths. Like, what is it going to take for this guy to finish as blank, right? What is it going to take for Devontae Smith to finish as a wide receiver 2? Not much. He finished as wide receiver 29 last season. He only needs to jump 5 players. Last season, taking a look at fantasy points, let's find ourselves our friend Devontae Smith. Oh, where was he? Let's see. He was really good, actually really good last season, more so than I thought he was. Devontae Smith finished with 180 points, right behind A.J. Brown, funny enough, but behind Marvin Jones by 3 points, behind Juju by 4 points, behind Kenny Galladay by 5 points, right? Like we're talking minimal amount of points here, right? Behind A.J. Brown by 2 points, behind Chase Claypool by 6 points, behind Robbie Anderson by 7 point, right? I'm sorry. Those are projections. Let's go ahead and actually find out how he did last season. He did pretty darn good. Devontae Smith, 154 points. He was about 20 fantasy points behind Terry McLaurin, which would have gotten him to a really solid wide receiver 25 finish, right? You're talking Darnell Mooney at 179, right? So we're talking 25 fantasy points. That's not that crazy to think that he could get 25 more fantasy points than last season. A 10% increase, obviously, is only 15 more. So again, low end wide receiver 2 is probably his floor, right? We're coming around to it. That we're probably looking at low end wide receiver 2 is his floor, and I love that, right? You're getting him at pick here. Oh, what did I say? It was 85. Yeah, pick 85 on Sleeper. Like you're taking him. You got a full roster. You're taking upside swings. You're taking maybe a second flex. Devontae Smith, it's there. The path is there to a wide receiver 2 finish. The path is there. A.J. Brown has the path to a wide receiver 1, but these guys, like I said, are going to work in tandem. Let's talk about this Giants wide receiver room, because I know I didn't quite touch on it yet. Well, that's because I don't believe in any of them. I'm not high on anybody here in this Giants wide receiver room. We're talking guys like Kadarius Toney, Kenny Galladay, and then Wan'Dale Robinson, right? And I don't believe that Brian Daboll is going to force the pass. Brian Daboll works to his team strength. His team strength is going to be the run. It is going to be the run, motion, quick passes that benefits Kadarius Toney, that benefits Saquon Barkley. Kadarius Toney is really the only guy I'm looking at out of this wide receiver room here in the Giants. Kenny Galladay, maybe. Kenny Galladay had an absolutely woeful season last year. Injured, just didn't catch anything. And I think he's a guy that's predicated on target volume. Kenny Galladay, he's not going to get it here. Kadarius Toney could end up being a gadget guy. Brian Daboll's going to get the ball in playmaker hands. And Kadarius Toney and Saquon Barkley are playmakers. Kenny Galladay is not really what I would call a playmaker in the same sense, right? So give me Kadarius Toney if I'm taking anybody, especially at pick 116. The upside is there for Toney. Take the swing. Other guys to mention is Michael Gallup. We'll see how he comes back from his ACL. It's always risky to take a guy right off of his ACL. Jahan Dotson with Washington could be interesting. I don't know about it. He's pick 142. You're really getting him for free. Jalen Tolbert could be a sleeper, maybe to keep an eye out for. The slot guy, lots of targets available there in Dallas, especially if Gallup's not ready to go. Jalen Tolbert, 3rd round rookie, is going to have a role. Keep your eye on him. Preseason, we'll see how he's being used. If he's with the second team or if they're sheltering him, then that'll tell us quite a bit what they think about him. Finally, let's wrap this one up. It's been a relatively long one because there's a lot of fantasy relevant players here with the tight end. And there are two. There's only 2 in this division. It's Dalton Schultz of Dallas and Dallas Goedert of Philly. I think the one guy that suffers the most from an increase in production for Sanders, an increase for Devontae Smith, and the arrival of A.J. Brown, I feel like Dallas Goedert's that guy that's going to really, really end up suffering. Now, he's got the talent, he's got the rapport, but he finishes a tight end 10. I don't like the upside with Goddard. I don't think it's there. I think too many mouths to feed. And ultimately, I think it's going to be Dallas Goedert that gets the bite. I just don't see it for Dallas Goedert this year. I just don't think that he's got that high upside. Whereas Dalton Schultz, the targets are there. He finished a tight end 3 last season. I think Dalton Schultz could bounce back. Well, not bounce back, but come back with another top 5 tight end performance. And you're getting him at pick 64. Pick 64, you're talking 4th, 5th, 6th round. Dalton Schultz, I believe, is currently like the 5th or 6th tight end off the board. Give me that. That's his floor. I want to see that. Dallas Goedert being taken as, I think, like tight end 7, 8, maybe. I just never been a big Dallas Goedert guy. I understand, like, he's been good when he's been used, but he's never finished better than tight end 10. I don't really see him as a guy you want to target as your tight end. Just stream a tight end at that point. Why waste the 83rd pick overall? You're talking the 9th round. You're getting some still high upside guys, Kadarius Toney, Tom Brady, right? Guys like that at that pick, right? Tony Pollard, excuse me, not Miles Sanders. Tony Pollard is going right about that. I would rather have Tony Pollard on my team than Dallas Goedert. A position needs be damned. I'd much rather have Dalton Schultz if I'm taking a tight end out of this division. He's the one I love this year. I think people are sleeping on him because they're going back to the usual names, the Wallers, the Kittles. Obviously, Kelsey and Andrews deserve it, but Pitts, I think, he deserves it too. But I don't see any reason why Dalton Schultz can't be another top 3 tight end. I don't see a reason why he can't provide really safe, solid tight end 5, right? He's going to be tight end 5, in my opinion. I don't see him finishing much lower than that. And you're taking him below his floor. And I just think that Dalton Schultz, you want a tight end. You don't want to spend a premium pick on it. Dalton Schultz, target him, draft him. You'll be happy with it. And who knows? He may just end up finishing top 3 again. And we'll see. But that is the NFC East. Players I love in this division: Jalen Hurts, Saquon, Miles Sanders. I also love Devontae Smith. Kadarius Toney is a little bit of a sleeper. I love CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, really solid. And I love Dalton Schultz. Players that I would say to stay away from: any quarterback not named Jalen Hurts or Dak Prescott. Running back Antonio Gibson. There's too many question marks there. With the way they're going to use that backfield with Robinson and McKissick potentially stealing vital fantasy work from him. Wide receivers to avoid: I think Michael Gallup. I think Kadarius or Kenny Golladay, excuse me. Those 2 guys, are you really avoiding them if they're going in the 120, 130s? I don't know, but there are wide receivers here that I would take at their spot for sure. Lamb, Brown, McLaurin, Smith, take them and avoid Goddard. I don't know why Goddard every year slips up to that tight end 7, pushing Hawkinson and somebody else, at tight end 6 and 5. It's not worth it, guys. Dallas Goedert is not the fantasy tight end you think he is. He's not as good. He's good. I shouldn't say he's not good. He's a great tight end, fantasy wise. Tight end 10 doesn't matter to me. I'm not looking to draft tight end 10. I do not want tight end 10 in a single digit round pick. No, thank you. I will rather take a high upside wide receiver or a high upside running back at that spot. So there you go, guys. That is this NFC East preview. We will be continuing this series. I am going to jump off it and do what I think could be kind of cool, a lot of fun, breaking down players per tier that I love and that I hate. The Love and Hate podcast is coming up for you guys next, so make sure to subscribe if you want to hear that one. Leave 5 stars if you enjoyed it. That does help a lot. It means a lot to me, guys. And I will talk to you guys in the next one.